Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook World Cup ante-post preview. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, and joining me for the next few weeks are our usual team of Mark O'Hare, Adrian Clarke, and Miguel Delaney. Lads, we've got plenty to get through, and in terms of outright markets, in terms of golden boots, there's plenty to discuss. But at the very top of the show, I just wanted to get your takes on what's different about this World Cup, Mark. And I might throw this one to you. For those sitting down, having had a relentless Premier League and Champions League last few weeks, in terms of betting angles for this new World Cup in the winter, have you thought of any, or is there anything to watch maybe throughout the next few weeks?
It's hard to pinpoint something in particular. Obviously, we've got a new region hosting the competition, a new kickoff time as well, being in the European winter mid-season. Some people are suggesting the players will be fresher for it because normally it becomes at the end of a long, exhausting campaign. But actually, as you sort of alluded to there at the intro, I'm of the opinion that some of these players might be absolutely knackered already because of the relentless schedule of playing or cramming 6 rounds of Champions League football in alongside league football as well, and getting just a week's turnaround really from your last domestic match to being sort of flung into the World Cup finals really. So in terms of preparation time, it's eaten into almost everything really, and it's tricky in that sense. I guess from my own perspective, it's just at least in the first few days, I always find with major tournaments, you get a good feel for things early on. Is it going to be a cagey competition? Is it going to be a little bit more open? You kind of get a few examples in the first week or so, and I think because of the preparation time and the lack of turnaround time from domestic matters to international, I think there is an opportunity, particularly in the match day one, for upsets, and I certainly wouldn't be sort of getting involved in heavy favourites to overcome big handicap hurdles in the opening week. I think Spain kick off against Costa Rica, for example. Costa Rica, who will be, let's say, defensively minded, being kind. They're going to put everyone behind the ball and park that bus. Spain traditionally starts slowly, and Spain traditionally have trouble unlocking deep line defences. So that's one to watch. But I guess there's occasions like that where you just need to be aware and try and understand the tactical approach from both teams, try and understand what the aim and aspiration of both teams is going into that game, and also consider the conditions as well. So I'll touch on it later. But I thought Qatar around this time of year might be slightly cooler than it is, and I've been watching the temperatures daily really just to get a feel for things. And just a couple of days ago it was 35 degrees in the afternoon. Today it's hit 29 degrees. So if it's below 30, it feels manageable. Anything above 30 suddenly becomes an issue, I think, for some of the sort of North European teams. And you look at the Dutch, who are in a Group A alongside Qatar, Ecuador, and Senegal, and you assume that the other three in that group will probably be conditioned to the climate, whereas the Netherlands might take a bit of adjusting to. So little things like that. How much they sort of impact your betting is your own guess and your own opinion, really, and just got to take each case as it comes. But I'm always, as I say, I'm a big believer that those first few days, that first week, gives you an idea of how this World Cup might be. It could be chaotic, it could be really, really dull and boring, and you just got to try and react to it.
Yeah, you're definitely right, though. Every World Cup seems to take a life on its own, of its own. So it's definitely one to watch that first week or so. Adrian, pick up Mark's point just on the relentless schedule and players being tired. And we actually spoke a bit off air. I was speaking with Mark there in terms of there's actually few international friendly scheduled for teams playing in the World Cup this week, which I actually wasn't aware of. So there's a lot of games coming at these players before the World Cup.
Yeah, a few nations are trying to squeeze them in, aren't they? It's but it's not ideal. I was nodding along to Mark's points. I think it makes some really valid points there that are well worth considering. Those early kickoffs in particular are going to be tough. I was recently over in Dubai and, it's warm. It's over, 32, 33, 34 degrees. It's not easy to play football in those conditions, which will be in the sort of, start of the afternoon or middle of the afternoon. So that's tough. I think the players are fit, but they're a little bit fatigued. I think that's where I'm at with it. I think they're fitter now than I think they would be in a summer tournament, but also they're all carrying bumps and bruises. So that might mean that managers have to rotate their squads a little bit and just manage those minutes because players have been, worked so hard in the build up. I think that the lack of friendlies, the lack of prep time definitely lends itself to more chance of upsets because managers get their teeth into the players. A lot of the work in the build up to a tournament is about shape. It's about off the ball work. It's about prepping for the opposition. That's all going to be congested so much now. A lot of information for the players to take on board in virtually no time. I think that that lends itself to more possibilities of upsets where the minnows know all about the big guns anyway. And a lot of these smaller nations, like the home nation, for example, Qatar, have actually spent a lot of time together in the run up to the tournament. So yeah, from a player's point of view, they can't wait for it, but it's not ideal.
Yeah, Miguel, we've spoken a lot on the weekend pod from a club point of view in terms of how players will react post World Cup. And I guess the question on everyone's lips for the next couple of weeks anyway is how will players react and how will teams react on an international level to this new time in the calendar?
Well, I mean, just to take up speaking to a few people within the squad in football, this could be a little the split issue. And I do take Mark's point about how you get a feel for it early on, but I mean, it has happened in the past with kind of World Cups in curious climates, or sorry, not curious, but World Cups in kind of in different climates where there's been a curious kind of split. So say if you take the 2014 World Cup, started really lively and then got very constrained in the group stage, or sorry, in the knockout stage. And with this, from talking to people, like as regards to fitness, I do agree a lot of players are feeling the intensity from a very concentrated schedule now. But the way it was put to me is ultimately their physical load, as the conditioning people describe it, is not that high. Certainly nowhere near as high as it would be until in June, say for June World Cup. So from that perspective, the recovery won't be as long. So we could have a few prime to go. But the lads have raised the point about how they have barely any time. It's for some squads, it's only 5 or 6 days before their first game. And I think that could mean we have a lot of upsets in the first round of games or surprising results. But I think, and the way it's been put to me by a few people, if the big teams or the more favourite teams can survive that opening round, then we might see them go to another level because they'll be in relatively decent condition, but also they'll have spent 2 weeks together knowing and get a feel for the team. And that's why I think this could be a little bit of a split competition in that regard. But it could be about who survives the opening games.
Yeah, absolutely. And even, as you mentioned, teams later in the groups, the higher groups could perhaps have a slight advantage if more time to work with their players. So fascinating how that plays off. If you guys are watching on the live stream, do get your comments in. Hit that like button and subscribe button as well and get involved with the chat. We'll try to get to some comments if we have time at the end of the day. And if you're watching back on the live stream, do comment who wins the World Cup and who'd you like to see maybe as a dark horse and a back to lay options. And one thing you can do in the exchange is back to lay. So what the guys are going to do with their outright picks here, they're going to pick their main selection, but they're also going to pick a back to lay option as well. And it's probably a good time to tell you a little bit about a sign-up offer we have currently on Matchbook.com. So this is a 20% boost on your World Cup winnings on the outright market. So if you look here, you can see you get a 20% boost in extra cash up to £200. So for example, if you back Brazil, which I won't give away too much, it is one of the guys' selection at 5.0, you'll be paid out at 6.0. It's for new customers only. You enter the bonus code WC Outright. That's WC Outright. And full terms and conditions are available on Matchbook.com. So on that note, we'll take a look at the betting as we have it on Matchbook.com before I get the guys' selections. And you can currently back Brazil at 5.0, Argentina are 6.8, France are 8.2, Spain are 9.8, England are 10.5, Germany are 12.5. We've got the Netherlands at 15.5, and the likes of Portugal are 18.0 with Belgium at 20.0. And 36.0 is Denmark with bigger prices to the rest. So Mark O'Hare, we'll hand over to you in terms of this one. I touched on your selection being Brazil here. Why do you like the favourites, and are they backable currently at 5.0?
Yeah, I think they are. I think they are the most rounded team coming into this competition. I think they have the strongest squad, which always doesn't necessarily mean outright glory at all, particularly in a low-scoring competition, low-scoring sport where we've seen shock results happen consistently. But I look at every other team, bar Argentina probably, and say they're all flawed. And even Argentina, you could say, they're coming into this competition on the back of an outrageous unbeaten run. They've just beaten Brazil in the Maracanã in the Copa America final to get the trophy, the search for a trophy off their backs. And it feels like fate for Messi to go the distance and lift the trophy on his final World Cup. But how are Argentina going to react when they don't get the first time kind of things don't go their way? We don't know really. Whereas Brazil, they've been together in this squad under the same coach and management now for for well over 5 years. I thought they were very unfortunate to go out at the quarterfinal stage to Belgium 4 years ago. They've definitely improved since then. You look at the squad defensively, individually, you might not be too impressed, but I think what they do collectively makes up for that, particularly in central midfield. They've got the best goalkeeper or goalkeepers in the world. Going forward, they've got such outrageous talent. Some big names are going to be missing out in the starting 11. Probably Vinicius Junior will be on the bench. That's how strong their forward line is looking at the minute, and they just cruise through South American qualifying. The big doubt really is the fact that they've not been tested outside of their own region for a long time, and they're really concerned by that themselves. But there's a real belief in that squad that this is the year. It's 20 years now since they last won the trophy, and they have been favourites for every competition since they won the trophy, and they've failed to sort of really feature in the final reckoning. But I think this is probably the most rounded, cohesive unit we've seen for quite some time. Certainly Brazil are coming into the competition with a coach who's been there, done it and seen it on almost every other stage, bar the World Cup, and he is bowing out after this competition. So you've got Neymar kind of at the peak of his powers. He's looked really engaged and focused this season because the World Cup is just around the corner. And, you're looking at a squad which is relatively healthy and fit and firing almost in all areas. I think they've learned mistakes of previous years when things haven't gone their way. And I think they're absolutely primed to go the distance. They've got a difficult draw for sure, but I think that will engage them immediately, playing Switzerland and Serbia in that pool. And I think the route to the final, if they win the group, and they have won the group in every World Cup they've competed in since 1978, their path to the final is tough, but it's tough for everyone. But I think they're more than good enough to sort of navigate their way to the final and do the business. And if it's Argentina they have to beat on the way, then I would back them to do so.
Yeah, it could be settled for Grand Slam finish with Messi in Argentina. And Miguel, I think, are you coming at this from a Lionel Messi World Cup angle here, given that he's been playing so well for the last few months for PSG?
Partly, yeah. It certainly influenced my selection. I mean, the one thing I would say is that I think for the first World Cup really since 2006, maybe, there isn't a super favourite where, I mean, like in 2010, you had Spain, a big Spain era. In fact, really, 2010, 2014, and 2018, they weren't just teams coming to a peak winning it. They were also teams that were examples of wider infrastructural overhauls in those countries' entire football approach. And it produced these peak teams. It could have been England this time because England have gone through the same infrastructural overhaul they've actually taken the lessons of Spain and Germany and France. But it does feel like maybe that should have been Euro 2020, that the team's gone a bit stale. And certainly almost England feel in a second tier of potential champions, because just looking across the group and why there's no super favourite really is because there's no perfect team there. In fact, it's not just no perfect team. There's every single contender, I think, has flaws or issues to compromise over. A lot of them over scoring goals, or in England's case, actually, it's kind of the core centre of the team and centre half and centre midfield. France have lost their spine. Germany don't have a scorer. Spain don't have a scorer. But I think the two teams with the least issues and going in kind of the best form and the best mental shape, best team shape are Brazil and Argentina. I don't think there's very little. I don't think there's very much between them. That does make, because Argentina are actually a relatively higher price than Brazil, which does influence my thinking a little bit. But even aside from that, I think I'm going for Argentina to win it because of that, because I think the mindset of the team, I think the way Scaloni has them, and his story is quite remarkable in itself. He's not quite stumbled. Well, the Argentinian Federation stumbled into a manager that suddenly suited this team really well. He's developed an approach that suits him really well and is currently getting the best out of a revitalized Messi, who's playing much closer to goal with players running off him. They look dangerous. They've got real force about them. And on top of that, okay, so they do still have flaws in the team. They've suddenly got Messi in, I don't want to say career form, given what he was in 2011, in 2010, in 2012, in 2015, but certainly probably the best Messi we've seen for some time. And he looks physically sharp, really ready to go with this. And I think that will make a difference. I mean, even Brazil, even if they're maybe slightly better overall in terms of pure quality as Argentina, I don't think Neymar is not on Messi's level. He's Brazil's best player. And I think that it's that cohesive unit combined with this individual star, possibly probably the greatest player of all time, really honing in on what would be his career feat. And I think for me, it's Argentina.
Yeah, and Adrian, you agree, particularly, I guess, with that Lionel Messi angle and playing his best football, but also playing very well for Argentina over the last couple of years.
Yeah, he just looks happier, doesn't he? Look, I'm with the guys. There's very little to choose between Brazil and Argentina. I'd probably be inclined to agree with Mark and say that Brazil's squad is slightly more rounded. But yeah, there is this narrative about Messi. He seems to have come into form at the right time. He's never been this relaxed, this happy, or maybe even this influential for his country. And the team is almost built to make him function better. Got a lot of hard-working midfield players in there. Rodrigo de Paul, Paredes, Rodriguez. You've got Alexis McAllister potentially to come in there. These guys will do the hard graft to release Messi, to have his free role, to wreak havoc alongside probably Lautaro Martinez up front. And I think that those two can do some serious damage. So yeah, I like the look of Argentina. Obviously, they've not been beaten for over 3 years. It's quite remarkable. I was looking at their long unbeaten run, and it features 21 clean sheets. It features 11 games where they only conceded once, and they let in 2 goals in just 3 matches. So, to beat them, you're probably going to have to score 2 goals, and the odds suggest over a long stretch of time that they're not inclined to concede multiple goals. Now, this is a step up. Clearly, most of the time they're just playing South American opposition, especially with COVID. There's not been as many international fixtures, but we did see them wipe the floor with Italy, didn't we, at Wembley in that finalissima? Very, very impressive performance, and at the back, where I've never been a huge fan of Otamendi. I don't think I'm alone in that. But they look better with Romero. If Romero plays, Lisandro Martinez as well. And behind them, Emi Martinez isn't as good as Alisson. It probably is the best keeper in the competition. But Emi Martinez is pretty solid, in my opinion. So I think they've got and I do believe having a good goalkeeper makes a tremendous difference in a tournament like this. So yeah, there's lots of reasons to fancy Argentina. It might come down to a semi-final against Brazil if everything goes to plan, and they have had the better of Brazil in recent meetings. I think that's a genuine 50-50 matchup. So Brazil at 5 or Argentina at 6.8, when it might all boil down to that one matchup, I'll go with Argentina.
I just want to say, just quickly, I mean, Martinez in goal is a massive difference. Huge step up on where Argentina were 4 years ago. But I would have been Argentina and still am very pro Argentina too. But Giovanni Lo Celso being injured does disrupt the midfield trinity a lot, I think. And replacement was there; it needs to be found. And if I'm being really snobbish, and it's just because I'm being snobbish about it, but Argentina are available at 11.0 in June. The cash has come significantly for them in the last 6 months. There's big hype around this team. There's big expectations. That's reflected in the market move. So, if you got on in June, you're absolutely laughing because you can easily trade out already before the ball's even been kicked.
Yeah, and we'll get to trading options in just a second there. And if you do think 6.8 is a bit skinny and you haven't got a matchbook account, as I keep saying, that boosted price on Argentina is 8.16. Now, I think with the 20% booster winnings is going to really come into effect, guys, is when you pick a long shot or a big odds. So we have plenty of them here. And Mark, we'll stick with you on this. You've got a couple of big shouts, one at a decent price and then one that I'm just not going to give away, but it jumped off the page. So I'll let you take away these couple of selections. And I'm looking forward to the case for the second.
All right, okay. The first one, I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking Uruguay can play above their odds of 50.0. They're housed in Group H alongside Portugal, South Korea and Ghana. They're second favourites to come through in Group H, and that's why they're probably as big as they are, because if they do finish second in the group, they're most likely to come up against Brazil in the last 16, and that could be an early exit. But Uruguay have been South America's best performing team at 2 of the last 3 World Cups. They're going through an interesting shift in terms of generational talent. There's still a lot of the old heads lingering around, the likes of Suarez, Cavani, Diego Godin, Martin Cáceres. They're all still there or thereabouts, holding on really. But there's a new breed coming through, particularly in midfield. They've been refreshed. Defensively, they need Araujo to be fit from Barcelona. He is a big miss if he's missing, because he's got recovery pace, which the others don't have. And going forward, it looks like they're going to start with Suarez in attack, even though he's been playing football back home really to try and keep himself in tune competitively. But I do think the further we go into the competition, Darwin might actually sort of nuzzle him out of the way and be the starting striker rather than starting from the left, which is what he has been doing. So we'll have to see how that evolves. But yeah, I think they've got a good enough chance to win Group H, because I have my doubts over Portugal. And suddenly, if they do win Group H, it opens up the draw for them because they avoid Brazil. They've got a winnable last 16 tie, get through that, and suddenly that price starts to shrink a little bit. And I always think sometimes, rather than just judging a team, judge it from the opponent's point of view. And I think whilst this might not be the Uruguay of 4 years ago or even 8 years ago, if you were England, Spain, Portugal, whoever you might be, you could be Brazil for all matters. If you're coming up against Uruguay, that's not a game you're going to relish, is it? You're not going to look forward to playing Uruguay. We talk about Atletico Madrid in terms of Champions League football. They may not be the force they once were, but you don't want to play them. You don't relish those matches. It's going to be a battle, particularly in that middle area of the field. And yeah, in a low-scoring sport, as I keep saying, variance happens. And sometimes that's all you need is a bit of battle to try and win these games. So I can see Uruguay playing above their odds, and I can move on to the more outrageous shout, if you like, Dan, which is
please do. But Mark, just before you do, so you would have put this in the document at 640.0. Now there's more liquidity constantly in the exchange, so it is drifting. It's now currently 770.0. Incidentally, if you do
this
take
doesn't
out 20%,
look right. Iran to win the World Cup. I can't believe that's an actual sentence.
And even better with the boost, you can get 924. But Mark, very quick, we do have a saying in horse racing that if your horse is drifting, the old school thought was, "Oh, don't back it." But most proper punters would say back it again, because if you made it a bet at 5.0, you still make it a bet at 7.0.
Yeah. Look, Iran aren't going to win the World Cup. We know that, don't we? But this is a trading opportunity. And I believe that Iran are being discounted in Group B. I think they're being priced up as no-hopers, and they absolutely are not. To start with, they've got the best coach in Group B. I think that's unquestionable in Carlos Queiroz.
No.
They are ultra defensive, supremely organised, and very difficult to break down. And I think that's going to be an issue for Wales in particular, who have struggled in similar environments. They've had to rely on the likes of Gareth Bale to score dead ball free kicks, efforts from long range, etc. But if they're playing against a 10-man block in front of the defence, that's going to be tricky, But Iran aren't just a defensive team. They've got ability in forward areas. Mehdi Taremi's had an outstanding campaign in Europe. Azmoun is still struggling to be fit, but if he is fit, it's another top talent in forward areas. And, they play both England and Wales in the afternoon heat. That's an edge for Iran for sure. If England or Wales are playing in 30-degree heat, trying to break that team down, that's going to be tricky. Go back 4 years, Iran were in a group alongside Spain and Portugal. They were a last-minute miss away from topping the group. They missed it, and they ended up not progressing. Suddenly, it's those kind of key moments that kind of just can either go for you or against you. And if they were able to sort of scratch that close to being, in the last 16 in a group alongside Spain and Portugal, why can't they get through in a group of USA, Wales, and England? Of course, England are favourites, and England should comfortably come through this group, but I think the USA are being vastly overrated. I can't believe that they're on a par with Wales in to qualify markets here. I think going forward, you've got the emerging youngsters who can really make a difference. But I think their sights are set probably 4 years' time when they're hosting the competition. They've got great energy in midfield, but at centre half and centre forward, there's massive problems there. There's doubts surrounding the head coach as well about the style of play. They will be high pressers. I think this is a really awkward group, I think, for England and Wales. Because I think all teams can offer something different. But I just think Iran are more than capable of scraping a point here and there and winning a tight game against the likes of the USA or Wales. And I just think the draw as well, play England first up. That's the game you want first up from an Iranian perspective, when England are possibly underprepared, going straight into the heat, into the furnace, and then Wales having to play England last up. That's not ideal for them either, because England could easily be through already, and Wales suddenly have to throw the kitchen sink against an England team who won't really want to lose to their sort of little brothers, if you like. So don't really rate the Americans. I think Wales deserve to be second favourites, but I think there's not a huge amount between those three behind England. And I just think Iran are being priced up as no hopers, and they're really not. I think they can be really competitive in this group. And if they get through, they're not going to be 770 to win the competition in a fortnight's time. So that's your opportunity to get out. But we'll have to wait and see, because I guess as well, if we're going to really sort of think ahead of things, if Iran don't win the group, they're probably going to finish second. If you think they're going to qualify, that might mean a game against the Dutch. And I have my doubts over the Dutch anyhow. So, I wouldn't put it beyond them to do a Costa Rica from 2014.
Wow. And as you were talking, I was just smiling to the screen beside me because there was a small bit of money for on Matchbook. So now they're into 730.0 there, Mark. So someone's taken probably the highest price they'll ever be, 770. But Miguel, you can move on to your picks, but I want you have touched on before about England and Iran, and without even thinking about it, going, that's a boring 0-0 written all over it. So you never know, I guess.
Yeah, certainly an awkward game. Yeah, I do think England's group, I mean, I would expect England to get through relative comfort. I don't really rate USA at all, which I suppose we'll come back to that. But yeah, I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout's the wrong word, because one's mostly counter-attacking team, one's a very, very low block team, as Mark has said there. That's going to create difficult games for England. And I think it could be a little bit like Iran's group in the last World Cup, where they narrowly finished actually 1 point behind Spain and Portugal. It could have gone through, and I think we could have similar here. Maybe England gets 7 points, but it's not. I don't think it's unrealistic, given everything we said about the difficulty for the big sides, that England could be sucked into a bit of a kind of an attritional battle here. I think they'll get through, obviously, but yeah, Iran could be a very good shout to go through. On that as well, I mean, I mentioned USA there. It actually shocked me that USA were a lower price than Wales. I really don't have much faith in them at all, I have to say. I might end up looking very stupid there. But for Wales to be that far out, all things considered, I'd probably just go for Wales to finish behind England for all sorts of reasons. They've actually got good tournament pedigree now in terms of getting through groups. They've got sufficient quality. They've got Bale, who's still actually in good physical shape, and obviously turns it on for Wales. So I would fancy them. I'm giving that a 410. I'd fancy them to get through the group at least. But a big one in that regard, I think, could be Ecuador, because I think Netherlands will get through Group A with 9 points, I'd say. But Qatar are an unknown. Senegal, I would have had them to finish second, except suddenly there's a few issues with the team, not least the fitness of Sadio Mane. I think Ecuador, they surprised most of South America getting through. They've got a good core. A lot of them we see at Brighton. And I think they could surprise a few people and are a good pick for that to get through the group, the odds shorten, and and suddenly it looks a lot better around them.
Like, and again, these are like back-to-lay options and fun ones to watch in the tournament. For example, as Miguel touched on, Ecuador 290. If they somehow find themselves in the quarterfinal, they will be a lot less than 290.0, or indeed you can boost that to 348 with our new sign-up offer. Adrian, you're in agreement on Wales here. I guess similar angle to what Miguel was saying there. If they do come second to England.
Yeah, I'm just looking ahead to who you might get paired with in the last 16 as well. And I don't think it's the strongest group, is it? The Netherlands, Senegal, Ecuador, Qatar group. So if Wales were to finish second, they could face any one of those four sides, and I think they'd give them all a game. I really do. And then all of a sudden they might be in the quarterfinals at a significantly lower price. They've got match winners, haven't they? That's what they've got. I mean, Kiefer Moore is potentially underrated in terms of what he offers in the air. You know, it's a different type of football, but centre halves won't relish having to deal with him. Gareth Bale against the low blocks has the ability to score from distance, as does Harry Wilson. By the way, I think he's got a tremendous left foot, and he can maybe make a difference for Wales. So I think in a very odd looking group, Wales have an excellent chance of getting out there. They've lost 4 of their last 5, but they were mainly against Belgium and Holland, and they were all really close games. Before that, they'd lost 1 in 11. So I think Wales can be competitive for sure. And if they get through, the odds will shorten, and I don't think they'll have the toughest draw moving forwards. My other back to lay is similar in terms of who they might get in the next round, and that's Serbia. Serbia are in good form. 15 matches, the last 15 matches, won 11, drawn 2, lost 2. They've got 2 very, very dangerous frontmen in Alexander Mitrovic, who might miss the first game, but I suspect he's saving himself for his country. You've got Dusan Vlahovic as well there, who can be a difference maker. And they're really settled. They've got a legend in charge, haven't they? Dragan Stojkovic, who's organised them pretty well, I've got to say. And yeah, I think they will be a tough game for everyone. Now, it's not an easy group. Obviously, tough start against Brazil. But we've already talked about how the first game is the biggest chance of an upset. So if I was them, I'd want Brazil first. just in case they can spring a surprise. Cameroon and Switzerland aren't easy games, so definitely. So they could easily finish bottom of this group, but I think that they're capable of finishing second to Brazil, in which case they would go and potentially meet a Portugal, Uruguay, Ghana, South Korea, and I think they'd have a chance of progressing all of a sudden. A little bit like Croatia in the last World Cup and in 1998. We see a Balkan country go on a lovely run towards the back end of the competition. I think they've got goals in them. They've beaten some good teams. They finished above Portugal, didn't they, in their Nations League group? They recently beat Norway, kept Haaland quiet, beat them 2-0. They battered Sweden. It's not easy to batter Sweden. So I think Serbia have got something about them and are capable of getting to the last 16 and maybe at a push the quarters. And then that price is going to shrink massively, isn't it?
They beat Ireland as well, Adrian. I was waiting for you to list off Ireland as one of their impressive results.
I was just talking about the big scalps, yeah.
People had the quality to beat Ireland.
No. I think, did Matt Doherty get a last-minute equaliser against them in the Aviva to essentially keep Kenny in the job? But look,
that was the turning point, actually.
Yeah. We'll be in the next one, don't worry. I promise you that. Serbia to win the World Cup, 130.0, or as I mentioned, the 156.0. If you do want that 20% boost, last call on that is enter the bonus code WC outright, and full terms and conditions are available on our website. Guys, we'll move on to group winners next up here. And look, we've kind of covered a lot, so we'll maybe rattle through a few of them. Adrian, you like a few here, so do you want to maybe take it away in the group winners?
I'll be as quick as I can. I'll be as quick as I can. I think that there's a lot of short price favourites in the groups that aren't attractive to bet on, but I do think that Croatia are interesting. They're a team that was very good in the Nations League. They topped a group, didn't they, including France and Denmark. It's the kind of last chance saloon for them, isn't it? With this generation of players, they keep going on and on and on. But they're actually, you look at their form, and it's pretty strong. They're in Belgium's group, and I don't think Belgium are the strongest seeded team in this tournament. And I think that I think if it comes down to a Croatia v Belgium, I think it's more of a 50-50 than anything.
Yeah.
I think they're more than capable of beating them and therefore potentially topping the group. So, I'm looking at them. Uruguay, I mean, Mark's covered Uruguay. I think that, with what's going on with Portugal in their camp with Ronaldo and that bombshell interview, I mean, you saw the handshake, or non-existent one really, from Bruno. It's going to be a bit awkward. Ronaldo's made it about him. And he does impact the team a little bit in a negative way as well, doesn't he? With this sort of lack of work rate at the top end of the pitch. So I think Uruguay are capable of winning that group at a good price. And then I'm looking at the other group, the one containing Germany and Spain, and I see that Spain are the favourites to win that group. Odds on, Germany odds against. Again, I think that attracts me to Germany. What a team! What a set of players! Great talent. I think they've got an outstanding manager. I'm a big fan of Hansi Flick, even though he's a bit risky with that high line. I do like the nature of his management, and I think that Germany will see a refreshed, rejuvenated Germany in this tournament that might go and have a lot of fun. And again, I think it will come down to the game with Spain. They've got a terrible record against Spain in major tournaments, but records are there to be broken, and I think that they could potentially at least draw or maybe beat them and therefore top the group. So those would be my three rather backable group winner options.
Just on the Germany-Spain, I think this is really interesting. I mean, first of all, in terms of coaching quality, really, I mean, definitely across Europe, but certainly across all tournaments, we're not just talking about the only two managers that have really had success at the top level of European club football, but they've both won trebles, which, I mean, really stands out. And I think over the course of a tournament, and given their ideas of football, that will impose itself. But in terms of the group itself, I think it's a very interesting one, because it's almost like Germany, I think, have a higher quality squad than Spain. But Spain actually arguably have two individually better players, bar maybe Musiala in Pedri and Gavi. But Spain almost seem a better team in bigger games. And I think even their best performance in Euro 2020 was when they took on Italy and really should have beaten them in the semi-final. And I do wonder with Spain where we might see a situation where they actually beat Germany, but have one of those very typically Spanish performances of the last decade where they completely dominate their games against Costa Rica and Japan, but they struggle to score and end up finishing second in the group because of that. So yeah, that's kind of my I think that's a really interesting one. Then of course, as you say, I mean, Costa Rica can be awkward and maybe throw a bit of a differential in that group.
Yeah, and you Miguel, you also kind of agree on Uruguay as well at a price to qualify.
Yeah, I mean,
win their group, sorry.
I don't really fancy Portugal, I have to say. I mean, there's also.
What's your take, Miguel? Very quickly, there was a Cancelo video there today as well. Are Sky Sports are they reading too much into that kind of stuff? It reminded me of Roy Keane and Saipan for a split second.
At this point, given Portugal and given what we're seeing with Ronaldo, I don't think it's possible to read too much into it, because even with Ronaldo, everything we suspected, he suddenly made very clear. But I mean, before you even get to the Ronaldo circus, there's loads of questions, say, about Southgate being maybe whether it's going a bit stale. Well, that's multiplied by an order of magnitude with Fernando Santos, where everyone you seem to talk to in Portugal thinks he should have gone maybe 2-4 years ago, despite obviously the good feeling towards him because of winning Euro 2016. But there's this sense, I mean, they've got an immensely talented group of players, and yet it feels like it's a system not really built towards their best talents, and also based around Ronaldo, who further forces you to play a different way. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if, now again, Ronaldo, he's done it before, all of that. He's well capable of making us look silly, although less so these days, you'd say. But it wouldn't surprise me if we're in a situation this tournament where suddenly Portugal might be on the brink of going out and they have to make a decision on whether to change approach. I think they're a very interesting team to watch in terms of drama, and it's why I kind of just fancy Uruguay to finish ahead of them in that group.
Yes, and 3.05 Uruguay, and that's what Adrian touched on. That you agree is Croatia 3.4. That's basically nearly 5-2 as well to win the group.
Belgium are, I mean, what talking about staleness, that's an old team. Even the fact they've still got Vertonghen and Alderweireld coming in, it's not far off the team that was kind of like that was supposed to blaze a trail at Euro 2016 6 years ago. And I mean, at the very least, it feels like there are ingredients there for Belgium to potentially have one of those underwhelming campaigns. Not so far as to go out in the group stage, I'd say, but I think they could disappoint. But then is it even disappointing now? Because I don't know, it's not like actually people are looking at them in the way they used to.
Yeah, Mark, over to you. And the second thing that stood out after I recovered from the Iran selection, which you've explained, by the way, very well, was Denmark to win the group versus France, because their team, I was very impressed with the Euros. They were even more impressive in between the Euros and this World Cup. So I still think they're probably a little bit underrated by the market here.
Yeah, I had a very strong love affair with Denmark at the Euros, which ended in tears really at the semi-final stage. I really believed it was their destiny to go the distance at one point, and to even get to the semi-finals was a remarkable achievement considering what they encountered in that competition, and they went through it with just a real wave of emotion, really, and to now have Christian Eriksen back on the field in a major tournament is, who knows what it might do. I don't want to get all spiritual or anything like that with you, but those kind of things can make a difference, and they're a hugely united group. I think they've got one of the best underrated head coaches in the competition. He's a real tactician, very smart guy, Kasper Hjulmand, and as I say, there's a real team ethic about the place, a really solid spine as well. I think defensively, whether it's centre-half or wing-back, you've got options there, real classy options too, real sort of battling midfield too, but there's quality in forward areas as well. The only question mark is over striker, who's going to play up front or score the goals, but actually through qualifying, they hacked up and scored loads of goals. And I think they had 18 different goal scorers contribute, which kind of goes to show they don't really need a centre forward. They can hit you and hurt you in various different ways. And as I say, having Eriksen now back in the fold, playing good football too, feels like there's unfinished business there. And it's as much a pro-Denmark approach as it is an anti-French attack as well, because they've lost their World Cup winning midfield for this competition. I think we're seeing with Chelsea how they're struggling without N'Golo Kanté in midfield. I think the same could be said of France. Pogba as well, missing. Kimpembe's now been ruled out as well. I think they're already stocked at centre-half. But I think that midfield is interesting because you've got these two emerging players in Camavinga and Tchouameni, who clearly are going to go on to greatness. But it's a huge, huge ask for them to step into a World Cup, into that French team and perform to the same levels of those two players. I know Fofana's been doing great things at Monaco too, but beyond that, I mean, we're going to have Rabiot starting for the French team again. Really underwhelming, uninspiring. But beyond those players, look at the French midfield options for the World Cup. We say they've got the deepest stock of players, but actually look at their options in midfield now. It's not actually that impressive. So Benzema's been injured as well. Doesn't look like he's going to be starting and fit available for the start of the World Cup as well. And look, Denmark did them home and away in the Nations League this calendar year already. That they're confident, they know how to beat France. I just think the price is too big, 3.65 on the Danes to win the group. So there's that. You guys have already covered Uruguay, so I kind of skipped to the Belgium one as well because, yeah, I'm very much at the start of competitions. I want to look at the groups and see how many of these sort of short price favourites are bomb proof. How many can I see slipping up? And I think Belgium are the obvious ones to oppose at the prices. They're 1.69. I'm happy to lay that price. Guys already talked about Croatia. I don't think you can discount Morocco in this group at all either. And even Canada, just we don't know. They're unpredictable. They've not been tested outside of their region. But over the last 3 World Cups, these are the nations who have been knocked out in the group stage. Germany, England, Spain, Italy, Portugal, France. Big nations do go out early doors if they're not fully prepared. And, you know, Miggs has already talked about the centre-half options for Belgium. The golden generation has faded. They're flat-track bullies. They do tend to fall short in the matches that matter against the big teams. But also it's just that, you know, you've got 2 world-class players in Kevin De Bruyne and Thibaut Courtois. But outside of that, I think it's questionable. The back 3 all play in Belgium these days because they're not good enough or fit enough to play anywhere else. Lukaku's not been fit all season. He's probably not going to start the World Cup, which means Batshuayi, who can be erratic as anything, and Hazard as well, who's barely played at all. So, you know, you look to those key players from previous campaigns. There's a few of them still around, sort of playing to that same level. The flip side is obviously De Bruyne can win you a match on his own, but I just think that group is probably the most open of the whole competition, and I could make a strong case for Croatia. I could make a case for Morocco. I could even make a case for Canada. So I think at 1.69, I'm happy to lay Belgium to win the group, which means as long as anyone else wins it, we kind of get our money.
Yeah, it's an interesting play there. And of course, you can lay on the exchange there, as Mark said, if you can't make your mind about who might finish ahead of Belgium there to finish top of that group. We're going to go to qualify from group. So a couple of selections here. Adrian and Mark, you agree. So Adrian, I'll let you take away on the pro Senegal case. I was looking at their team earlier. They have some brilliant Premier League players.
Yeah, it's not a bad team at all.
Yeah,
you know, Mendy in goal, Koulibaly, Sarr, Bamba Dieng from Marseille. This is all without Mane. And the news today, I think, was positive. News coming out of the camp is that he might miss the first game, but could be back for the others. And of course, the first game that they've got is against Holland. That's the tough one. Mane
Memphis
back
missing for Holland as well that day.
Who is?
Memphis Depay is missing for the Dutch in the first game.
Yeah. So, you know, that sort of levels that out. But Mane back for the 2 easier games in the group might just be enough to get them over the line. I'm just a little bit surprised to see Senegal in this group rated just the right side of it, of even money. They're not odds on to finish second. So that definitely attracts me. That they're tight at the back as well, aren't they? Conceded 51 goals in 77 games under the current manager Cisse. That's a long, you know, it's just stretching back a long time now, but they've been solid for a while. Obviously, they were great in the AFCON. Well, you say great, but they were a solid team, and they went all the way. They made history, and there's a feel good factor there, and they'll rate themselves as Africa's potentially best chance to go deep in the competition. And it's not a tough group. It's not the toughest group, is it? So yeah, to qualify, I'm definitely attracted to Senegal at 2.04.
Yeah, Mark, as I mentioned, you agreed, and we covered the Iran qualifying group, so we won't spend too much on that, but just they're 4.6 currently, I guess, very quickly as a staking plan. If someone was listening and is going to stick that small bet on the win price and then small bet on the qualify from the group, where would you kind of recommend roughly as a staking plan for?
Oh, you know, if you've got 5 units, 4 of them are going on around to qualify, and one for the biggie.
The world's cancelled if Iran win the World Cup, isn't it?
Just on the Senegal one. I came into the competition really wanting to be with Ecuador and being quite firmly in the Ecuador camp. But weirdly, the Mane injury has changed my viewpoint because the prices have moved quite significantly on the back of that. They were fairly decent favourites or second favourites to follow the Dutch in. They've been eased out now, as Adrian says, 2.04, giving them less than a 50% chance of qualifying. Well, the squad's stacked in all areas pretty much. And, while spiritually and emotionally losing Mane is a big negative, I can pick holes in the Ecuador team as much as I love them and I like them. I think they can be that wild card, but they start the competition against Qatar, obviously on Sunday. Host nations have never lost the first game. That's a tricky start for Ecuador. Then they play the Dutch. So the Dutch will have had a game already to get into their legs. And then obviously the last game is the two of them going head to head, Ecuador against Senegal too. Mane could be back for that. Mane might not be back. But if you look at the two squads side by side, even without Mane, you take the Senegalese squad every day of the week. And, Ecuador, for all the blood and thunder that they'll bring to this competition in terms of a striking option, they're very thin on the ground. They haven't scored 2 goals or more in a game for over a year. The last time they did was against Chile, who had a red card after 13 minutes. So whilst defensively they're pretty strong, going forward, the goals have dried up quite significantly. And I think the Senegalese team are more than good enough to keep them out. But yeah, I have one more, which is kind of leading into what we were talking about with Belgium as well, being unsteady favourites in that group. And I touched on it too. But Morocco, I really like them. They changed coach at the start of this year. And, the previous head coach, Valid Halasojic, is, a real strict disciplinarian. Players didn't want to play for the national team. Hakim Ziyech went into international exile. He's back. The coach was sacked. They've got a real home favourite in charge now. The mood has changed dramatically. They feel confident. They feel buoyant, but this is an opportunity for them. And if you look at the team, it's got quality all over the park. Bono in goal from Sevilla, Europa League winner. Centre half, you've got Roman Saiss and Aguiar of West Ham. You've got the best fullback combination in the competition in Mazraoui, Hakimi. Central midfield is probably a little bit light, but in the wide areas, you've got Ziyech, you've got Boufal, Ilias Cher of QPR. Obviously, I'm going to mention him. And going forward, you've got El Nasiri as well. So whilst he's not prolific, he's still been leading the line for top-class teams in Europe. So I think they've got a nice balance about them, and I think they believe in themselves as well, which hasn't always been the case. They'll fancy themselves to get something off those teams around them. As I say, it's such a balanced group as well. So there's opportunity for all 4 teams. Morocco are 3.2 to qualify, and I like that because, as I say, I can see Belgium not just winning the group, I can see them going home early.
Yeah, and this is probably a good time to mention that we'll have a full bets recap live on Wednesday morning on Matchbook Insights, insights.matchbook.com, because I know there's a lot coming at you, but a few plays from Mark there in the qualified market: Iran, Morocco, and Senegal for Adrian too. So we'll move on to Golden Boot there. We'll just take a quick look at the betting as we currently have it on matchbook.com. You can back Harry Kane is the favourite to go 2 in a row, the first man ever to go 2 in a row at 10.0. Mbappe is the same price, 10.0. Messi, 13.5. That's been clipped in a little bit there this morning. Neymar 14.5, Benzema 15.5, 22.0, and then Ronaldo, and then 24.0 is Martinez, with Dubai, as Mark said, potential injury doubt at 27.0. So, Miguel, you've touched on a lot of this with your Argentina case, but if it is going to be a Lionel Messi tournament, I guess he probably is a small bit overpriced at 13.5 for the Golden Boot.
Yeah, well, I mean, also at the moment with this Argentina, he's playing much closer to goal. Because previously with Argentina teams, there was so much focus on him and the structure was never right. I think this is particularly the case in 2018, where he actually wasn't at his fittest either, and the system didn't suit him. He was dropping back. He wasn't in areas where he could be most effective. That's not the case now. And I mean, if Messi's on some sort of form, then he's almost a gimme. I mean, this is someone who's basically just capable of going and scoring 3 or 4 on any given game, especially given it's a very forgiving group. Which is something else that really influences here. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go absolutely nuts on it, because I suppose he was in rampant form in 2010 and didn't score at all in that season. Even though in that World Cup he generally performed well, but he was in much more assist mode. But in this, I think we'll see a combination of the two, and I think it's just a very attractive price for someone of on that form and with that historic quality.
And Adrian, you fully agree, and I guess someone agreed with the two of you guys when you went in at 14.0, because someone definitely had a nibble on Matchbook there, so fair play to them.
Yeah, I haven't got enough money to change the price. It wasn't me. I mean, he's got 9 in his last 3. I mean, they have played some pretty easy games. He did get 5 in one game. But even look, last season, 6 in 13, so 1 in 2, which was a bad season for him. You look at him for club and country in the current campaign. What are we into November? He's got 21 goals. 21 is not too shabby at this stage of the season. I'm not saying it's peak Messi, but he's far better, far sharper right now than he has been for the last couple of years, in my opinion. Lautaro Martinez scored, I think, did they get the same, I think, in the qualifiers? It felt like he was getting maybe more than Messi towards the end of that campaign, but I think, Messi is capable on this kind of stage of delivering. Saudi Arabia first up, that's the chance, isn't it, to maybe put down a nice chunky win where you get a brace or even a hat trick to get your tournament up and running. That is a possibility, isn't it? The other games are Poland, Mexico, not the tightest defenses you've ever seen in the world. So I think that, there are opportunities in the group for Messi to get to 5 goals potentially, which would put him in the frame. And of course, he's never scored a knockout goal, has he? Am I right in that? Is that? Yeah, he's never scored a knockout goal at the World Cup. Well, in his last World Cup, I would fully expect him to banish that to the history books. He is the greatest of all time, in my opinion, and I think that this is his moment to kind of cement that. And I think he's going to have a cracking tournament along with his team. So Messi for me at 13.5 is good. Yeah,
Mark, if I know you like I do, so. Marty, you're putting up Martinez, his teammate, at 25.0, nibbled a small bit there into 24.0. Are you thinking that Messi will ultimately maybe create more for Martinez and as opposed to score them?
I guess so. Lautaro does start as a centre forward. Messi's slightly more withdrawn with Angel Di Maria also there or thereabouts. Not a bad not a bad pair of players to supply the bullets, is there? A couple of stats and trends which might be interesting to people I'm not sure on. Only 2 favourites have either won or placed in the top goal scorer market since 1994. The average price of a top goal scorer winner since 1994 is 56 to 1. 4 of the last 11 have been 100 to 1 or bigger, and 14 of the last 17 top goal scorers or shared top goal scorers have reached at least the semi-finals, and 13 of those have scored 2 goals or more at the group stages, and that tends to be where most players do their business in the group stages. And as we say, or Adrian was talking there, it's a more manageable group stage from Argentina than it is for the likes of Brazil or Germany or Spain, etc., and so on. So you'd expect Argentina to score a fair few in the group stages, and then it's up to them to survive really through the knockout stages. But Lautaro basically doubled the price of Messi, as Adrian says, scored the same amount of goals through qualifying. He's actually averaging a goal every other game under Lionel Scaloni as well, in decent form domestically with Inter Milan as well. He's just he's a starting centre forward for a team we expect to get to the final. I'll expect him to feature for the most amount of minutes too. I know they've got Julian Alvarez to come in off the bench, which might be an option really. But I think there's possibly more opportunity of Messi getting rested in matches that don't necessarily matter or towards the end of games when matches are done and dusted than probably Lautaro. So that's just a personal opinion. Both of them probably will be, because you've got Dybala coming back from fitness too, so you can easily switch out both of them if necessary. But I just thought the price was too good really for, as I say, a starting centre forward. And from a similar case can be made for Richarlison actually. Brazil is 32.0. He seems to be getting the nod for Brazil. So we expect Brazil to win the competition. 32.0 for their centre forward, who has been in goal scoring form for the Seleção. That's not bad.
Yeah, why aren't we picking Mbappe here? Like, because he's at the peak of, I would say he's coming into the peak years of his career. I looked at the 2022 World Cup as maybe Mbappe's World Cup. Yet we're sort of
my really issue with Mbappe. I've tended to avoid the French players just because the goals can be so spread around. You've got so many different options there, whether it's Griezmann or Benzema or Giroud or whoever's playing. Surely Mbappe will get the bulk of them, but you've got to question where his head's at as well. And we've already sort of talked about the potential negatives of that French team.
And Kane,
he's 10 as well.
True. And Kane. I suppose I think we're probably all leaning towards England being involved in some low-scoring matches in a very defensive group. Is that why we're not going with Harry? Because he's going to play every minute up top, isn't he?
And he's knackered.
Yeah,
he's still been scoring. He takes the pens. He takes the pens, doesn't he? As does Messi, by the way. That was another reason that
Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's it'll be interesting how that plays out in that Argentina attack going forward. Mark touched on the price, or the average price of the top goal scorer, which is an outrageous stat. But so for that reason, we're going to go into a bit of back to lay options as well. So Miguel, I'll let you take it away here in terms of a back to lay option. And this is a pretty big price, I guess, the Lewandowski for Poland. It's just a question of how far Poland can get in the tournament.
Well, that's what attracted me. I mean, because a striker of that quality at that price, and fair enough, the price isn't as big as some of the other potential options here, given the logic of this bet. But I think we could have a situation with Lewandowski where, say, he feasibly gets a hat trick against Saudi Arabia, say, the price drops. Poland wouldn't have too much confidence in going that far, but enough for Lewandowski to be in the conversation for a sufficient amount of the tournament that there's an opportunity there. Because at least bar the Argentina game, I think we could be looking at Oleg Salenko situation in '94, but Lewandowski should have a healthy appetite for that group. And yeah, as you say, at 60, it's very attractive for someone who's been in superb form in La Liga.
Yeah, I do love this market. I think you can make a case for anyone under 200.0 here. And Adrian, you are going to do that. And I made no secret to a lot of people I know that I really like Spain post Euros for this tournament. And I'm finding it very hard to get off it, albeit it hasn't been as impressive since then. But you're making the case for, they haven't been a bad form. You're making a case for a scorer here, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, the guys touched on it with the manager, Luis Enrique. He's a very, very good manager. And it wouldn't, and we got some amazing young players in that team. You know, Ansu Fati is a bit of a wild card pick in the end, but he could come good. But yeah, no, Spain, if we're going with Spain and Germany to potentially cruise through, then, you know, they could easily get to the quarterfinals and even beyond. You know, they did score 5 goals twice at the Euros, didn't they? We think of Spain being quite boring. But they were in that crazy game. Was it Croatia? 5-3, I think it was, wasn't it? And Slovakia, I think they smashed. So, yeah, and Torres scored in those games. And I'm a fan of Ferran Torres. I know that Morata is maybe the number one choice, but I don't know whether that will persist. I think that Ferran Torres, lightly raced, of course, by Barcelona this season. He shouldn't be fatigued. He'll be nice and fresh. I think he's a striker that can finish, let me tell you. And if you know, I would expect Spain to create chances against. I know we've talked up Costa Rica to a degree, but they should create plenty of chances against them, and certainly against Japan. And Germany's high line might suit Ferran Torres as well. So yeah, I'm just looking at him maybe racking up a few group stage goals, and Spain going to at least the quarterfinals, maybe even beyond. I think that price will come in massively, and then I'll jump out.
Just on the point there about, I mean, this is like, I don't want to sound offensive here, because I suppose I am half Spanish and all that. But in terms of the point about whether Spain are boring, I've always felt that was misinterpreted, because I don't think it was Spain themselves that are boring. I think it's just they're so associated with possession football that what it does is it forces the opposition to be boring, because the obvious response was always to sit deep. And that's usually coincided with, bar when they had David Villa, the lack of a top-class finisher or someone who's going to break the line in that way. And it's why Alvaro Morata being so unreliable has been an issue. So, but then a classic example of what happens when you come out against Spain was that Spain-Croatia game. So like you had the two massive contrasts of basically the Sweden game in that Euros and then the Croatia game. And you're right. I mean, Fati, given he hasn't played that much this season, and he's someone that he's really something that Spain don't usually have, that turn of pace, that break, and he could make some difference in this tournament.
Against Germany, yeah.
Yeah, Mark, Musiala is one for you at a price, 120.0.
Yeah, love him. One of the great young players in European football right now. He's going to go on to major things. He already is doing major things. You know, he's starting regularly at the tip of the 4-2-3-1 for Bayern Munich, which will be the system that Hansi Flick employs in a very similar way to Bayern Munich, because that's what he built. And he is flourishing in that role for Bayern. I think he's got 10 goals and 12 starts already this season in the Bundesliga, let alone playing in the Champions League. And I think he slots straight into that Germany team in a similar role. And I just look at that price; it's enormous, really. We've got Kai Havertz there at 55, Serge Gnabry at 60. Musiala's double the price, and
130 now, Mark. So
yeah, it's silly. It's silly. We've put this in back to lay. This is one where I'll probably back and let it run, because I think Germany under Hansi Flick are gung ho. They will go for you. They won't care if it's Spain or Costa Rica. They're going to play attacking football. They're going to be proactive. They will create chances, because defensively there are weaknesses there, particularly in the fullback areas. They got such control in midfield of Gundogan and Kimmich, and then they've got obviously a revolving cast of players who can play in that front four positions. But Musiala seems to be the one who's going to get tipped to play in the central role behind the striker, which is where he's at his most dangerous. Where from distance or getting into the box with late runs, he is a menace. And I expect him to get a couple of goals.
Yeah, he'll play ahead of Muller. Yeah.
There you go. And Mark,
he's a good talent. Yeah, he's a good talent.
He is very exciting to watch. And Mark, you mentioned a couple of these won't be official selections on Matchbook Insights, Mark, but there were a couple you just thought were a bit overpriced in the exchange for maybe listeners, that if, say, Olivier Giroud, for example, starts for France, he could be a wild price. I think 230 currently.
Yeah, well, the news, it's always changing, but the news at the minute is Karim Benzema won't start the competition and might not be fit until the knockout stages. Obviously, you've got to listen out to your trustworthy sources to hear who knows what and when. But yeah, if that is the case, Giroud will be playing in the role, because as we know, Mbappe or Antoine Griezmann both like playing with a foil. So Giroud will probably start. Just wrong price, really, if a guy's starting for France, regardless of your thoughts of them outright. Massive price. I can't remember the others I gave you, Dan, because I didn't make a note.
You should. It was Griezmann was one, I think, was it?
Yeah, it's just keeping an eye on team news and stuff. And we talked about Belgium as potentially being bombing out early doors, but that's another one. Probably Lukaku won't be fit for starting the campaign, so you might look towards Batshuayi, who will start, being in good goal scoring form for Belgium and his club this season. We know he's inconsistent and erratic, but again, he's a huge price, considering he's starting for one of the teams expected to win their group. Just things like that. You just need to be aware of the team news right now, and there will be options to back a few massive prices and trade out after a game or two, because they might have got off to a decent start.
Yeah, Leroy Sané was the last one.
Yes, yeah. Again, just for exactly the same reasons as Musiala, really. He's 160 or something stupid. Yeah, I mean, you can back most of the German players and just cheer them all on.
On that topic, Mark, unfortunately, Musiala, someone's gone into and really had a good few pounds on. So we've got 100.0 on Matchbook, but look, we'll see if that comes out again. But someone is watching somewhere anyway. So saying,
Mark, just moving the markets live. This is very exciting. Yeah, no one's gone for Torres then.
No, well, let's have a look. Is he on the drift or not? But for what it's worth, Adrian, I like the Ferran Torres show because I'm a big Spain fan. So. That's all right. Before we get to best bets, if you are watching the live stream, as I mentioned, we may get very quickly to one or two. I saw one or two comments if you do want to get to them. But best times, Mark, if you were having one bet on an outright bet, and there's one bet you want to put on, who's it going to be?
I realised I didn't fill this in on the sheet, and so I'm feeling. Do
you want me to come back to you? I'll come back to you.
Yeah. There's so many I like.
Yeah, that's a good sign for the rest of them that have been put up. Adrian, you like Uruguay to top the group?
Uruguay to top the group. We've covered it plenty. There are a few red flags around Portugal. I don't see South Korea and Ghana challenging them really, if truth be told. I think that with Darwin Núñez coming into a really good form, I think he could be a very exciting player in this tournament, and he adds a lot to the Uruguay side. So yeah, for me, at 3.0 to top the group, that is decent value.
Yeah, Miguel, for you, I love this. You're really going for this one, and back to lay. So it's perfectly in your nature to go for a big one here, and it's Wales at their current price to maybe get out then in the quarterfinal stage, perhaps.
Well, it's just given the tightness of that group beyond England, and even England could get sucked into. I just couldn't believe the size of the Welsh price. I think they're a good bet to get through. I probably if I was just taking it as looking at it neutrally and kind of picking my predictions for tournaments, I probably would have gone England, Wales to get through. So that will obviously see the price come down. Then you're into a last 16 against, and that group itself, who they potentially get, could be quite erratic. And I just, I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
There's a big price, yeah.
Sorry?
It's a big price. That's exactly
it. And I'm surprised that given I don't really see like Wales. They've proven themselves a good tournament team. Okay, they remind me a little bit of kind of previous Irish sides, but actually still with a much higher quality player, or at least than Ireland have had since Roy Keane in Gareth Bale, even allowing for his move to the MLS. And yeah, I think very, very difficult to get to bet against. I mean, last two tournaments they've been in Wales, they've got through the group.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the fourth mention of Ireland this podcast, which is fairly impressive.
How is this happening?
I know, yeah. Yourself and Miguel are terrible, honestly. Mark, tell us who your best bet here. This is now on the spot best bets. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, I'm going to lay Belgium to win the group at 169.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I don't fancy them at all. They might get through, and sure, they probably will. But I just think that price is doing a disservice to the likes of Croatia and Morocco and even Canada. I don't think it's an easy group. I don't think it's straightforward for them at all. The guys have already talked up Croatia a lot. I can easily see Croatia winning the group, but I've already sort of nailed my colours to the Moroccan post as well, and they're more than good enough to give these teams a go. And look, I probably didn't mention it, but Morocco. There's a connection between the two countries, Morocco and Belgium. It's almost a bit of a little derby between the two as well. So the Moroccans will be absolutely buzzing for that game. So they'll have a lot of support over there too. It will feel like a bit of a home game for Morocco. They do travel in numbers, and they have already sold a lot of tickets for their matches too. So yeah, I'm happy to be on the Morocco bus, but on this occasion we'll just lay Belgium to win the group at a short price.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we go, a couple of comments. Jesus 48 to 1. Brazil to go deep. I'm reading the same stuff you are, guys, in terms of it'll be Richarlison. I'm guessing that will start for Brazil up front.
Yeah, and he's not in good goal scoring form, is he? But I love him.
No.
Absolutely adore watching Gabriel Jesus. But the goal scoring form tells you that I couldn't back him for Golden Boot.
Yeah, as people are saying,
he could easily take Richarlison's place, I guess. And then he's in with a shout, isn't he? But yeah, it's I'd want to see that first lineup, I think.
Yeah, and Miguel, very quickly, a couple of the comments about US and saying we're being a little bit harsh to underrate them. What are your thoughts on that?
But their form has been so unconvincing. And I know from speaking to a few US journalists and some other people close to the camp, I think maybe a little bit of skepticism about Berhalter. And yeah, just don't do it for me, I'm afraid. Also, I mean, it's not helped by the fact that Pulisic hasn't really had a proper run with Chelsea. So much is centered about him. He is the US's megastar in that way. Although there is an argument that he hasn't really, I mean, again, some of this is circumstantial, to be fair to him, but he has not really developed into the player so many hoped he would be. He has had some injuries. And I just apologies that don't fill me with that much confidence. I mean, again, I'm there to.
That's okay.
Look just
yeah. Mark, final one for you then. Don't sleep on Japan. We didn't really get a chance to mention them. What are your quick thoughts on them in a few seconds?
I love what they've got in terms of options in forward areas. The issue being they haven't got the right coach to get the best out of them. They've been playing quite conservative football, which isn't really in their manner. They tend to be traditionally, their strengths tend to be moving the ball pretty directly and pretty quickly in forward areas, and they've been quite the opposite really under the current head coach Moriyasu. But they've got quality across the board. They don't have a player up front who's going to score you the goals. That's always been their issue. They've relied on Osako in previous competitions. He's not in this squad. They've got quality, as we know. Mitoma at Brighton. That you can any 3 or 4 from a whole bunch of wingers or attacking midfielders who can do you a job. But they've been put in a ghastly difficult draw they're having there with Spain and Germany, which might actually work in their favour if they're going to play on the counter attack. Spain are going to have a lot of the ball, so it might give Japan an opportunity in transitions. Germany will give you opportunities, so it's just how clinical they can be, and that's my concern. Is they don't have anyone who's known for it. They've got plenty of players who can fashion chances. I guess I could put them similar to Brighton right now under De Zerbi. They're going to create chances, but can you rely on them to take them against elite opposition consistently? And that's the worry.
Great stuff, guys. Gone well over the hour, so appreciate your time. Matchbook Insights is the best place to get the full recap of the bets tomorrow morning, and we'll be back on Friday. We see a few comments there in terms of strategy for specific games and maybe goal lines being too high. That'll all be covered on our pod, which will be out Friday morning and we'll be live. So my thanks to Mark, my thanks to Adrian, my thanks to Miguel. We'll chat to you guys on Friday. Enjoy the World Cup build-up and the Ronaldo interview. Bye-bye.
Bring it on. Yeah.